Excluded from Christmas for being a plumber, I cut off my sister's law school money. Now she's begging, and I'm better off without her. Okay, so I've been sitting on this story for a long, trying to figure out where to even begin describing this disaster. I suppose I should introduce myself first. I'm 32, unmarried, and own my own plumbing business. Yeah, I know, it's not the most glamorous job, according to certain people, including my family. But, to be honest, I make a lot of money and enjoy my job. There's something rewarding about fixing difficulties and assisting others, even if it occasionally requires dealing with their literalism. LOL. Amanda, my 26-year-old sister, is currently attending law school, which I have been paying for. Yeah, you read that correctly. I've been paying her full tuition since she started. Her lover was a hotshot doctor at the local hospital, a real piece of work. But we will get to him later. So this is where things went awry. About a week before Christmas, I received this call from my mother. Now, you have to realize something about my mother. She never calls just to speak or check on me. It's always because she wants something or there's a family issue that needs to be resolved, usually involving money, to be honest. However, this call was different. She begins with a strange, hesitant tone, as if she is about to tell you that your dog has died. Then she lays the bombshell on me. I'm not invited to Christmas this year. Just like that. There is no notice, discussion, or anything. At first, I assumed I misheard her, as if she had said they were altering the date or something. But, nah. She goes on to say that it might be best if I sit this one out because they want to keep things comfortable for everyone. I'm sitting there, thinking, what the actual, one, since this is so unexpected. We've always celebrated Christmas together, even while I was working long hours to get my business off the ground. Sure, my family has always been odd about my job. They enjoy the money I make, but God forbid they tell anyone what their son and brother does for a living. So I pressed her on it, asking, what's the real reason? She began hedging and hawing, talking in circles about professional looks and everyone's comfort, but she refused to give me a clear answer. It wasn't until later that day that I learned the true cause, from my cousin Sarah. She'd overheard Amanda discussing it with our mother earlier that week. Apparently, my lovely sister had informed our parents that having me for Christmas would be awkward because I did not fit in with her and her boyfriend's professional standing. Allow that to soak in for a minute. My own sister, who I've been helping through her law school, was ashamed to have me for Christmas because I'm only a plumber. She was concerned about how her fancy doctor partner would react to having to sit at the same table as someone who worked with their hands for a career. The more I thought about it, the more things fell into place, like how Amanda never invited me to any of her law school events, despite the fact that I was paying for her to attend, or how she always changed the subject when her friends asked what her brother did for a living, or how she never introduced me to her boyfriend, despite the fact that they'd been dating for nearly a year. Do you know what the worst part was? My parents agreed with her. They truly believed it was okay to exclude their own son from Christmas because his employment would make their beloved daughter's boyfriend uncomfortable. The same son who has been providing for the family since he was 18. The same son who built his own successful firm from the beginning. The same son who has been paying for their golden child's law school education without complaint. My mother tried to sugarcoat it with phrases like, well, honey, you know how these professional circles are. And maybe, next year, when you've developed your career more. What the boss does that even mean? I own my own business. I have staff. I earn 6 figures performing honest work. But apparently it isn't evolved enough because I don't wear a suit and tie to work. I spent the entire day stewing over this information, growing increasingly irritated. Not the heated, angry type of pissed off, but rather a cool, calm knowledge that my family, particularly my sister, had been exploiting me while being ashamed of me the entire time. That's when I decided it was enough. If I was too embarrassed to bring to Christmas dinner, my money would be too embarrassing to spend for law school. What kind of message would it send to my sister's fancy beau if he discovered her law degree was paid for by a gas-passing plumber? But hold on, this is only the beginning. The real, what I had show began when I made the decision to take action. And let me tell you, karma is especially when it comes with the accompanying student loan burden. So, after learning that I was barred from celebrating Christmas because my blue-collar profession would insult my sister's boyfriend's delicate sensibilities, I was in a strange state of mind. You know that feeling when you're so enraged that you suddenly become strangely calm? That is where I was at. I spent the entire night reading over previous text messages and discussions with Amanda. And holy, guys, the signs were everywhere. I was simply too blind, or perhaps foolish to see them. For example, last spring, she had a graduation party to celebrate finishing her first year of law school. I had truly paid for the entire year, But I didn't receive an invitation. When I approached her about it, she lied about it being a minor issue in her study group. Later, I learned from Facebook that it was a large party at a posh downtown restaurant. Then there was the time when she required a new laptop for class. Despite the fact that I am very knowledgeable about computers, she asked me to simply transfer the money to her account rather than accompany her to choose it. Nowadays, it's almost a requirement. Even in plumbing, we use tablets and specialized software to provide job bids and schedule appointments. She said that she was too busy to go shopping together. But now I'm quite sure she didn't want to be seen with her plumber brother in the Apple store. Looking back, it's sort of funny in a sad way. For example, whenever she needed money, which was often, she would text her humiliating blue-collar brother. But when it came to acknowledging my presence in her fancy new life, the radio is silent. I decided to dig. The benefits of having a cousin who is still on the family group chat, LOL. Amanda had been preparing for the Christmas exclusion for weeks. She told our parents that her boyfriend, Craig, yes, his name is Craig, was from a very prestigious family, and she was concerned about making a good impression. Apparently, having a plumber sibling may harm her professional prospects, or some elitist, like that. Want to know the true kicker? My cousin Sarah, bless her messy, drama-loving heart, forwarded me screenshots of Amanda's remarks from the family chat. She had actually written, and I'm quoting this directly, "I just don't want Craig to think our family isn't, educated. It could affect how his family sees me, and they have so many connections in the legal world. Educated? Educated." I wanted to respond and inform her that the reason she's getting an education is because her uneducated plumber brother pays $43,000 per year in school. But I held back. I was beginning to formulate a strategy, and sometimes you have to play the long game. As I thought about it, I realized it wasn't only about Christmas. This was about years of my family, particularly Amanda, treating me as a filthy little secret. They were pleased to accept my dirty plumber money, but God forbid they acknowledge how I earned it. Here's a fascinating truth about plumbing that most people don't know. We have to study extensively. For example, years of apprenticeship, license examinations, and ongoing education to stay current with new legislation and technologies. I probably spent more time researching water systems and construction codes than Amanda did studying tort law. But because I work with my hands, they treat me like an idiot who couldn't make it in the real professional world. The reality is, I selected plumbing because I am skilled at it and saw an opportunity. I began working as an apprentice right out of high school, learned everything I could, obtained my licenses, and eventually launched my own firm. I currently have 3 vehicles on the road, 2 full-time staff, and more work than I can handle. But to my family, I am still the embarrassing brother who fixes toilets. I kept thinking about all the times I went late at work or did additional work to make sure I could pay Amanda's tuition. All those times I postponed purchasing new items for myself or contributing more to my retirement account because family came first. Meanwhile, she was actively attempting to conceal my existence from her new lover and his family. That's when my cousin threw another bomb at me. Craig's family did not appear to be overly concerned with such matters. His uncle, a successful contractor, built their family house. Amanda had simply assumed they would look down on me since that is how she sees me. I sat with all of this information for a few days, monitoring the family group chat via Sarah. They'd removed me from it weeks ago, ostensibly to minimize any discomfort surrounding Christmas arrangements. Amanda was going on and on about how pleased she was to host Craig for Christmas dinner, how his family had ties at all of the city's large law firms, and how this could be her opportunity to earn a summer position through his contacts. No one stood up for me the entire time, not my parents, nor any of my other relatives. Nobody remarked, "Hey, maybe we shouldn't exclude the guy who's been supporting Amanda through school." Everyone was just pleased about Amanda getting a prestigious internship through her boyfriend's family. That's when I realized exactly what I needed to do. If they wanted to pretend they didn't have a plumber in the family, I'd help them make that lie a reality, beginning with Amanda's tuition payments. So, after stewing over all this nonsense for a few days, I decided it was time to make my move. But here's the thing. I didn't want to write a furious text or anything. I wanted to do it in such a manner that they couldn't distort my words or make me look like the evil person, which is, incidentally, my family's favorite hobby. I waited until I knew Amanda's next tuition payment was coming due. It was due in about 2 weeks, and she was always really worried around this time. Normally, she'd start dropping subtle hints about remembering the payment deadline, like, "Oh, the school's been sending reminder emails," or something. What about this time? The radio is silent. She must have assumed that the payment would simply come, as it always did, even after they had barred me from attending Christmas. Quick side note, I had been paying my tuition payments straight to the institution using their online portal. Amanda had set it up herself when she first started, and she provided me all of the login information, which was really convenient since she considered me as her personal ATM. Right? Anyway, I got into the portal and noticed my upcoming payment. $21,500 for the spring semester. That's when I realized how much money I'd been putting at her studies while she was actively attempting to conceal my existence from her boyfriend. Do you know how many toilets you need to fix to generate that much money? Answer: a lot more than most people realize. So I phoned Amanda. I didn't text her, I called because I wanted to hear her voice when I dropped the bomb. She picked up on the third ring, sounded angry, as if I was interrupting something essential. Hey, she remarked in that tone that shouts, make it quick, I'm kind of in the middle of something. Oh, sorry, I replied, attempting to sound nonchalant. Just wanted to talk about your tuition payment. It's due soon, right? Her voice changed instantly. Suddenly, she became all lovely and interested. Oh yeah, thanks for remembering. It's due on the 15th. You're still okay to cover it, right? Actually, I replied. I've been thinking about what you told Mom and Dad about Christmas, about how having a plumber brother might embarrass you in front of Craig and his family. There was complete stillness on her end. You could almost hear her brain short-circuiting as she attempted to figure out how to spin this. That's not who told you that, she eventually exclaimed. Does it matter? I inquired. Is it true or not? More silence. Then she sought to enter damage control mode. Listen, you don't understand. Craig's family, they're really particular about these things. His father's a judge. His mother's on all these charity boards. I just thought it would be better if you pretended your brother doesn't exist. I completed for her. Because he's just a lowly plumber. That's not fair, she complained. I never said that. I need them to take me seriously if I want to have a future in law. You know how these circles work. I couldn't help laughing. Actually, I don't know how these circles work. I'm just a plumber, remember? But you know what I do know? The exact amount I've paid for your law school so far. Want me to break it down for you? She began to say something, but I continued going. First year costs $43,000. Second year, first semester cost $21,500. Plus all the other costs, your laptop, textbooks, and that special study program you simply had to have. According to my calculations, that's around $770,000 thus far. Everything was paid for by your embarrassing plumber brother. Why are you acting like this? She moaned. You know how important this is for my future. Craig's family has connections at all the top firms, and having a plumber brother would ruin that. I inquired. Even though that plumber brother is the only reason you're in law school in the first place. You promised to help me, she replied. You said you'd support my dreams. That's when I said it. Yeah, I did, when you were proud to call me your brother. But if I'm too embarrassed to have Christmas dinner, then I guess my money should be too embarrassing to pay for your tuition. You guys, the screech that came out of her mouth sounded like a pterodactyl's tail being stepped on. You can't do that, she shouted. The payment is due in 2 weeks. What am I supposed to do? I don't know, I responded, feeling strangely peaceful. Maybe ask Craig. I'm sure his fancy doctor salary could cover it. Or is my dirty plumber money the only kind you're willing to touch? She began crying, full-on dramatic sobbing. Please, she asked. I'll tell Mom and Dad I was wrong. You can come to Christmas. Just please don't do this to me. No, I replied. I don't want to come to Christmas. I don't want to embarrass you in front of Craig and his family. In fact, I don't want anything to do with any of you anymore. Consider this my last payment to the family that's ashamed of me. I hung up while she was still crying and begging and immediately banned her phone number. I poured myself a drink and braced myself for the impending storm. After that, everything began. My mom came first. She called around 5 times in a row before I eventually answered. The moment I responded, she launched into guilt trips, which are her specialty. She was crying about how I was wrecking the family and Amanda's future due to a silly misunderstanding. Silly misunderstanding? I asked. She literally told you she was ashamed of what I do for a living. The same job that's been paying her tuition. She didn't mean it like that, Mom explained. You know how Amanda is. She just gets caught up in trying to impress people sometimes. She looks up to you. I almost choked on my drink. She basically barred me from Christmas because she was humiliated by me. How the hell is that looking up to me? Then Mom took a different approach. Consider what this will do to her relationship with Craig. His family might greatly benefit her career. Oh, so you want to talk about Craig? I interrupted her off. It's funny how important he and his family are, yet your own son isn't even good enough to sit at the Christmas table. She started blubbering about how that wasn't what we meant and how I was taking everything too personally, which is a typical mom move, trying to make me feel like I'm overreacting when they're the ones being nasty. When my father called, he went straight for the angry approach, which was unsurprising, and he started ranting about how I was being selfish and vengeful, calling me a little one for endangering Amanda's education. Isn't that Father of the Year material? Let me get this straight, I told him. I'm a little mainamwadan for not wanting to spend thousands of dollars on someone who is ashamed of me. Make it make sense, Dad. We raised you to be better than this, he hissed. Family supports family, I replied. Really? Is that what you intended when you agreed to exclude me from Christmas? Was that a supportive family? He tried to explain himself by claiming that sometimes we had to make sacrifices for the better welfare of the family, which apparently included kissing Craig's ass in the hopes that he would boost Amanda's career. But what really struck me was that no one apologized for how they treated me during any of these calls. Instead, it was all about how I was bad for sticking up for myself, how I was being petty and vengeful, and how I was letting my pride get in the way of family. Then came the flying monkeys. My aunt called to tell me how disappointed she was in my behavior, my uncle texted, saying I needed to man up and be the bigger person, and even my cousin Sarah, who told me about Amanda's lies, messaged me, saying maybe I was taking things too far. But you know what? None of them offered to help pay Amanda's tuition themselves. The best part? Amanda actually went and told Craig what was going on, and I guess she thought he'd offer to help with the tuition instead. According to Sarah, who's still keeping me updated, Craig got really quiet and started asking questions, like, why hadn't Amanda ever mentioned she had a brother? Why didn't she introduce them? Why did her brother pay for her law school in the first place? Craig couldn't understand why Amanda would keep her brother's existence hidden just because he was a plumber. It turned out that his uncle, the one who built their family home, started as a plumber before becoming a contractor, and Craig had actually worked summers with him in high school. When Amanda tried to explain her reasoning, she just dug herself deeper. She started talking about professional appearances and social circles, and Craig got more and more upset, saying he couldn't believe she'd hide and disrespect her own brother, who'd been supporting her education, just for some perceived social status. Craig told her the next day that he wanted time to think about their relationship because her actions revealed a side of her personality that he didn't like. Who knew he had principles? Meanwhile, my parents were constantly blowing up my phone. Mom alternated between crying and begging, Dad between cursing and threatening. Amanda kept calling from other numbers after I blocked hers, and I ultimately turned off my phone for a few days. It was all about how I was ruining everything by not just shutting up and paying like a good little ATM, but I was done being their ATM. If standing up for myself made me the bad guy in their eyes, so be it. It was better than being their doormat. After a few days, Craig came over to Amanda's apartment. She probably thought he was there to make up, but no, he broke up with her. He said he couldn't be with someone who would treat their own brother that way, especially someone who had supported them so much. He said it made him question her values and who she truly was. Amanda lost her indecavas and contacted me crying and shouting from yet another new number. She's had more burner phones than a drug dealer at this point. She said I'd wrecked everything, that Craig broke up with her because of me, that her life was falling apart, and it was all my fault. I laughed and replied, no, sis. Craig ended his relationship with you after discovering your true identity. I just stopped helping you hide it. She threatened to tell everyone that I had sexually assaulted her in high school, that she would report my business to the Better Business Bureau for fraud, and that everyone would know what a terrible brother I was. Go ahead, I told her. Tell everyone your brother is a monster because he checks notes, paid for your education while you tried to conceal his existence. See how that works out for you. Then she went back to begging, crying about how she couldn't afford law school without me, how she'd have to drop out, how she'd lose all of her friends, and how her life would end. Guess you should have thought about that before you decided I was too embarrassing to acknowledge, I responded. Then I disconnected. After Craig dumped her, Amanda had a complete mental breakdown, according to Sarah. She began showing up at our parents' house at random hours, crying about how her life had ended. She had apparently told all her law school friends that her boyfriend was going to help her with tuition, so when he dumped her instead, she was completely screwed. The deadline for the tuition payment was approaching, and she still hadn't figured out what to do. She tried applying for emergency loans, but guess what? Those take time to process, and she left it way too late. Plus, she'd need a cosigner, and our parents' credit is a mess. I wonder why they keep trying to live beyond their means. Sarah texted me. 911, Amanda just posted on Facebook that she's heading to your shop to make you face what you're doing to her. She appears unstable? I barely had time to warn my guys before she blasted through the door like a tornado in designer clothes, hair all messy, mascara running, full crazy ex-girlfriend energy, except she was my sister. How could you do this to me? She screamed in front of my entire staff and about 3 customers, I'm your sister, you're meant to look after me. I attempted to encourage her to go outside or at least lower her voice, but she seemed determined to cause a disturbance. You are ruining my life. She screamed, all because your delicate feelings were harmed. You are so selfish. One of my clients, a sweet old lady who had been with us for years, stood up. Young lady, she asked. Is this the brother who has been paying for your education? Amanda turned around as if she'd been smacked. That's none of your business. Well, the elderly lady added, you just made it everyone's business by storming in here shouting. And, based on what I've heard, you excluded your brother from Christmas because you were ashamed of his profession, but you still expect him to pay for your education. That's known as biting the hand that feeds you, in my hometown. The look on Amanda's face, she genuinely didn't know how to handle someone calling her out on her BS who wasn't family, but she recovered fast and shifted to crying, like full-blown theatrical sobbing. You don't understand, she cried. He is doing this to punish me. He's attempting to harm my future because he's envious of my achievement. I couldn't help laughing. What success, Amanda? The success of convincing your partner to dump you? The success of maybe having to drop out of law school? The success of embarrassing yourself in front of my staff and customers? At the very least, I'm making an effort to establish myself. She shot out, not just playing with pipes all day like some. She had to stop herself, perhaps realizing she was about to degrade plumbing in front of a group of plumbers. My senior employee, Mike, went up, and heck, a large fellow who's been with me since I started the business, said, Ma'am, in a dead serious tone, I think you should leave now. For the past 5 years, your brother's pipe playing has provided for my family's needs. It paid for my children's braces and my wife's automobile, and it appears to have paid for your law school as well. So maybe offer some respect. Amanda looked around and realized she wasn't receiving the reaction she had hoped for. Everyone was staring at her as if she were insane, which, to be honest, she was. She tried one more time. Okay, I'll tell everyone what type of brother you really are. I'll post about it all over social media. Go ahead, I urged. Make sure you mention the bit where you had me banned from Christmas because you were embarrassed by my employment but still expected me to pay your tuition. I'm sure that will bring you a lot of sympathy. She stormed off after that, but not before knocking down our sign and clipboard and kicking a display of business cards off the counter. Very mature, sis? The elderly customer approached me after Amanda left, stroked my arm, and said, You know, my late husband was a plumber. Put all 3 of our children through college. They never once expressed embarrassment about what he performed for a living. Then Mom looked me straight in the eyes and said, You're doing the right thing, honey? Sometimes family members have to learn the hard way that respect is a two-way street. After that scene, I had to sit down with my staff and explain the situation, and they were remarkably nice about it. Mike even remarked that his family's Thanksgiving drama was boring in contrast. So after the whole explosion at my business, Amanda decided to go nuclear. She started calling every single member of our extended family, telling them this sob story about how her cruel brother was attempting to ruin her future out of spite. But here's the thing about family drama. Everyone loves to get involved, but no one wants to actually assist. The first one was Aunt Karen. Yes, that's her name, and yes, she lives up to it. Who got me all wound up about family obligations and how I was selfish. This is the same aunt who borrowed $5,000 from me 3 years ago for emergency dental work and never paid it back. The conversation went as follows. How could you do this to your sister? She demanded. She's striving to improve herself. Funny, I responded. I do not recall you agreeing to assist pay for her law school. You still owe me for your teeth, by the way. There is no more sound. That's different, she sputtered. How dare you bring it up? Is it different? I inquired. Because, from where I stand, this entire family enjoys talking about helping each other until it comes time to actually help. Then suddenly, everyone goes quiet. She hung up on me after that. I guess the reality hurts more than those teeth did. Then there was Uncle Steve, my father's brother. He's this wannabe big shot who's always boasting about his investment portfolio but never has money when the restaurant bill arrives, and he tried to lecture me about family investments. Think of it as an investment in your sister's future, he told me. When she's a successful lawyer, she'll be able to help you. I laughed so hard at it. Can you help me? She couldn't even bear to have me for Christmas dinner because I'm a plumber. But, okay, tell me more about how she'll help me once she's successful. Well, he said. Maybe you could help her finish school, and she could pay you back. Great idea, I remarked. Why don't you lend her the money then? You're always raving about your fantastic investments. Here's an opportunity to invest in my family. He suddenly had to leave. It's amazing how this keeps happening. The best part was that no one who called to guilt trip me offered to really help Amanda themselves. They all had opinions on what I should do with my money, but their own wallets remained firmly closed. I'm done with her, and I'll keep you all posted if anything occurs. Final update. My sister had me excluded from Christmas because I'm only a plumber, so I took away her law school funds. Hey everyone, I figured I'd post one last update because so many people have been messaging me asking what happened. I heard from a mutual friend that my sister showed up at her ex-boyfriend's house uninvited and tried to talk to Craig's parents. She told them this whole sob story about how she was about to lose everything and needed help, but she didn't mention hiding me because I'm a plumber. Craig was obviously present and gave them the complete truth, but his father, the judge, appeared to glance at her and say, "Young lady, if you're trying to be a lawyer, you should know that attempting to manipulate people by telling half-truths is not a good start to your career." In the end, she had to drop out of law school because she couldn't get private loans without a cosigner, and no one in the family was willing to cosign after what happened. When Grandma got involved and told them they should be ashamed of themselves, even my parents stopped asking for my help. Amanda is now working as a paralegal at a small law company. According to Sarah, she claims it is only temporary until she can return to law school, but we all know that is unlikely. As for me, business is stronger than ever, and I've actually grown to 2 more trucks and employed 4 new workers. I still meet up with Craig and his uncle Mike for beers on occasion, and it turns out we get along really well when there's no family turmoil involved. My parents tried to reconcile around Thanksgiving, but only because they needed help with their mortgage. I declined and told them that maybe they should ask their successful lawyer daughter for help. Oh wait, funny thing is, I actually feel better now that everything's out in the open. No more pretending, no more being the family ATM, no more walking on eggshells about my job, just me, my successful business, and my actual friends who don't give a can what I do for a living. Thank you for your support, Reddit. Sometimes you need strangers on the internet to confirm you're not insane for standing up for yourself. Edit. Holy, this blew out. Thanks for all the accolades, and to everyone who DM'd me about needing a plumber in my region. Sorry, I'm trying to remain anonymous here. Edit 2. To everyone who says I ruined my sister's life, she did it herself. I simply stopped paying it. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you. My mother always defended my older brother, but when he stole my younger brother's fiancée, our family could never be mended. My mother wants me and my brothers to overlook the fact that our younger brother's fiancée was stolen by our cunning golden child older brother. I never imagined that my family would fall apart in this way. A year ago, I would have laughed if someone had predicted that my elder brother, Caleb, would do something so heinous. My mother has always led us to believe that Caleb is the golden child, the one who did everything correctly. However, I can't stop thinking about how we got here as I sit here in my apartment and relive the nightmare that occurred only a few weeks ago. Logan's wedding, or what was meant to be Logan's wedding, was the beginning. Logan, my younger brother, is the most sincere individual I've ever encountered. He is a gentle, considerate man, who would give you his last dollar without hesitation. We were all overjoyed when he proposed to Avery. Avery seemed to love Logan as much as he loved her, and she was intelligent and humorous. Together, they were ideal. They were one of those couples you can tell is meant to be. And then there was Caleb. Even now, the details remain unclear. Logan and Avery were choosing flowers and completing the guest list one week. Avery was canceling the wedding the next week. Logan arrived at my door completely broken, which is why I can still clearly recall that day. His eyes were red-rimmed from sobbing, and his face looked pallid. He informed me that Avery had broken up with him. She simply stated that she couldn't carry it out without providing an explanation. I initially believed it might be chilly feet. Yes, that does happen. Weddings are a stressful event. Then, however, the truth was revealed. Avery and Caleb, who was supposed to be Logan's best man, appeared at a family BBQ less than 3 days later. We were all invited over for family time by my mom, Linda. I wanted to see how Logan was doing because I hadn't seen him since he arrived at my door crying. Caleb holding Avery's hand as they walked into the backyard as if it were the most natural thing in the world is something I will always remember. The whole yard fell silent, as if someone had put life on hold. As I tried to take in what I was seeing, I glanced at Avery and then at Caleb. "What on earth is this?" "Louder than I intended?" I asked. The king of smug smiles, Caleb, shrugged as if it didn't matter. He declared, "Avery and I are now together." Thankfully, Logan wasn't around, but my sister Riley dropped the pitcher of lemonade she was pouring. The patio's glass broke. I couldn't read my mother's expression as she looked at Caleb, but it wasn't one of shock. For me, that was the first warning sign. Linda had forewarned no one, but she instinctively knew this was happening. "You're kidding," I responded, trembling. Avery refused to look at me, so I hoped this was some terrible joke. Her face reddened with guilt, but she continued to stare at the grass. I've detested Caleb's calm down expression since we were young. In a frustratingly casual tone, he stated, "It's complicated, Mason. But everyone will benefit from this." "For everybody?" I lost my temper. "How about Logan? You just took your brother's fiancé, but what about that?" The term "stole" made Avery wince, but Caleb didn't even pause. The relationship between her and Logan didn't work out. "This wasn't planned," he said. I made sure he didn't finish though. Too furious to even look at him, I bounded away. Riley came into the kitchen after me. "Did you see Mom?" she said, trembling. "She said nothing at all. She seems to be fine with this." The second warning sign was that Caleb had always held a special place in Linda's heart. Being the eldest, he made the family proud with his corporate career and college degree. Logan and I, on the other hand, were just Logan and me. I used to make a joke about us being the family's spare parts, but it didn't feel humorous anymore. I gave Logan a call later that evening. I asked him if he was aware of Avery and Caleb. He didn't. He sounded hollow when I told him, not even upset. Silently. "Of course it was Caleb," he said. "It's always Caleb." The consequences were immediate. Riley completely cut all communication with Caleb. He dismissed my attempt to confront him once more, claiming that I was exaggerating. A few days later, my mother contacted me, her voice eerily serene. "Mason, we need to talk," she remarked. "About what?" Still fuming over Caleb and Avery, I inquired. "This weekend, we're having dinner at the house. Riley and you should come. It's time to put this behind us." I believed I had misheard her. Move past this? Logan was deceived by Avery. His heart was broken by her. Additionally, Caleb. She gently interrupted me, saying, "I know it's hard, but Caleb is still your brother. Despite his error, he is now content. Isn't that the important thing?" I couldn't speak. My mother, who was meant to defend us all equally, was once again taking Caleb's side. Riley rolled her eyes as I told her about the dinner. "Are you serious?" She is attempting to ignore this. Normal. I didn't disagree. Nevertheless, I felt compelled to leave, not for my mother or Caleb, but for Logan. I wanted him to know that he still had support. I was afraid of what I would discover when I arrived at my parents' house on Saturday. Riley was already there, crossing her arms as she sat on the porch. She said, "This is going to be a disaster," as I approached. I refrained from arguing. Caleb sat at the dining table as we entered, smiling as if he hadn't just split the family in two. Avery was also present, sitting next to him as if she were a part of the group. At the head of the table, our mother, Linda, was grinning as though nothing was amiss. "Come sit," she offered with a cheerful tone. "We're going to have a nice family dinner." Riley glanced at me as I gazed at her. I thought I may suffocate since the tension in the air was so heavy. However, as soon as I sat down, the catastrophe started. I was not interested in sitting at the table. To be honest, I wanted to just walk away and flip the fucking thing over. Riley and I had to speak for Logan because he wasn't present. Caleb needed to be called out. What everyone else was too cowardly to say had to be said. With a display of food so spotless that it seemed as though my mother, Linda, believed cooking could clean up this catastrophe, she stood at the head of the dinner table. She was grinning, bringing joy into the space as if she could make it material. Linda said, "Let's just sit down, eat, and talk." Riley whispered to herself, "I'd rather eat glass." As I glanced at her, Avery and Caleb were seated at the far end of the table. The sight of them together still made my blood boil. Avery. As if they were on a freaking date, Caleb had one arm thrown languidly over the back of her chair. However, Avery refused to look at Riley or at me. She continued to look at her dish with her head down, as though the mashed potatoes were the most amazing thing she had ever seen. I inquired, "Where's Logan?" I was surprised at how piercing my voice sounded. I got one of Linda's stoic "you're ruining this" expressions. Logan decided not to come. Riley answered, "Yeah, no kidding," while crossing her arms. "Wonder why?" Linda gave her a stern look but remained silent. She probably knew Riley wouldn't give up. Riley has always been the firecracker among us. Even though she is only 2 years my junior, she has never shied away from speaking her mind, particularly when it comes to Caleb. Caleb, who was buttering a roll as if he hadn't just exploded a nuclear bomb in our family, caught my attention. "So, Caleb," I replied. "You're just okay with all of this?" He gave me his angry, calm-down face as he gazed up at me. God, I detested that expression. Since we were young, he had been giving it to me as if he were superior, smarter, and older. He questioned, "What do you mean by this, Mason?" "This." I waved my hand at him and Avery and snapped. "Caleb, Logan's fiancé, was taken by you. The same Logan who asked you to be his best man because he trusted you enough. With this, are you kidding me?" With a heavy sigh, Caleb put down his butter knife, acting as though I was the one who was being unreasonable. "Look, Mason, this wasn't planned by Avery and me, and I know it's complicated. It just happened. Things just happened." Riley leaned forward in her chair and scoffed. "Is that your justification? You don't just happen to start dating your brother's fiancé?" Riley's comments made Caleb cringe, but he didn't raise his head. I was hoping she would stand up for herself and say something, but she just sat there and let Caleb speak. At last, displaying his aggravation, Caleb combed through his hair. "I won't just sit here and watch the two of you attack us. I have been open and honest with Avery. We're content together and don't require your blessing." "Honest?" I fired back. "You believe your treatment of Logan was sincere? You lacked the courage to tell him directly. Avery had to inform him when she decided to call off the wedding. That's enough." Across the table, Linda's voice could be heard. Mom gave me that familiar scowl of disapproval, the same one Mom used to talk back to me when I was a child. "We are not going to spend this dinner yelling at each other like children." Riley pushed her dish away and said, "Then maybe Caleb shouldn't have acted like one." Linda replied, "Riley, please," in a strained voice. "This isn't beneficial. The reason Caleb and Avery are here is to continue their family's journey. We must all extend forgiveness and move on from this." "Forgive and let this go?" Unable to believe what I was hearing, I gazed at her. "So you're just okay with this?" Slowly, I asked. "You're okay with what Caleb did to Logan?" Linda's expression softened, as though she were addressing a young kid who was just unable to comprehend the world. "Life is complex, Mason. Despite their mistakes, people should have the opportunity to be happy." "Happy?" Riley's fist slammed on the table as she burst. "Logan is wretched, Mom. You're behaving as if none of this is important. You're here acting like a hostess like it's Thanksgiving dinner after Caleb made him feel embarrassed." With his chair scuffing the wooden floor, Caleb got to his feet. "You know what? I don't have to sit here and have my home attacked. I've finished our talk." I yelled, "Sit down," in a low, menacing voice that even surprised me. I was so tired of Caleb walking away from everything: responsibility, consequences. "Logan, you don't get to walk in here with Avery like nothing happened and then act like we're the problem." At last, Avery raised her voice, but it was tremulous and quiet. It wasn't supposed to happen like this." I turned to her, and so did Riley. I questioned, my rage mixed with incredulity. "Then why did it?" Avery seemed to be waiting for approval before speaking as she glanced at Caleb. She inhaled deeply when he remained silent. "Caleb and we started talking months ago. At first, it was innocent but—" She paused. "He told me things about Logan. Things that made me doubt everything." "What things?" asked Riley. Avery stumbled over her words. "He said Logan didn't really love me, that he was just going through the motions because he felt like he had to settle down." Caleb ... I froze as everything came together. For months, Caleb had been sowing doubt in Avery's mind. That was his personality: attractive, cunning, and self-centered. Riley responded, "You've got to be kidding me," in a disgusted tone. "You let Caleb convince you Logan didn't love you? Logan adored you, Avery. Everyone could see it." Avery winced, but Caleb moved ahead of her while speaking in a chilly tone. "We're not going to sit here and let you two attack Avery. This conversation is over." "Fine," I responded as I got to my feet. "Then I guess I'll have this conversation with Logan instead. I'm sure he'll love hearing how his own brother was working behind the scenes to sabotage his relationship." Linda began. "Mason," but I interrupted her. I turned and left, Riley following closely after me. "Logan deserves better than this, Mom. And if you can't see that, then I don't know what to tell you." Riley released a breath that she had obviously been holding as soon as the front door closed behind us. She mumbled, "Unbelievable. Caleb's not even sorry. He believes his own lies." I didn't respond. What Avery had revealed about Caleb getting into her head and manipulating her emotions had my head spinning. This was no fortuitous romance. For some reason, Linda was ignoring the fact that Caleb had been planning this for months. Riley turned to face me as we entered her vehicle and said, "We have to tell Logan." "I know," I replied. "But I don't think this ends here." And I was correct. It didn't. Riley's engine hummed through the peaceful ride to Logan's place. She remained silent, and I did too. The identical thought was running through both of our minds. How in the heck were we going to explain this to Logan? Avery calling off the wedding was one thing, but what about knowing that Caleb had been deceiving her for months? That seemed like a completely different animal. I kind of thought Logan wouldn't respond when we arrived at his house. With the exception of the occasional text, he had remained a phantom ever since the split. However, the door slowly opened, revealing Logan staring at us with black circles under his eyes. He appeared slimmer, as if he hadn't eaten. He said, "Hey," in a low voice. "Didn't think I'd see you guys tonight." I said, "Can we come in?" After a moment of hesitation, Logan moved aside to allow us to enter. The flat appeared as worn out as he was. The curtains were drawn, his couch appeared to be his bed these days, and takeout containers were piled on the coffee table. Logan laughed without laughter when he saw that I was staring. "Yeah, I know it's a mess. Take a seat," he said, sweeping papers from the cushions and pointing to the couch. Logan remained standing, leaning against the wall with his arms folded, while Riley and I sat. He appeared protective, as though he was aware that we weren't just stopping by. "What's up?" he finally inquired, his gaze darting between us. Riley didn't hold out. "Logan, we need to tell you something about Caleb." Logan stiffened as soon as she spoke Caleb's name. His eyes widened and his jaw tensed. "I don't want to talk about him," I whispered. "You need to hear this. It's about what really happened with Avery." Her name made Logan cringe. I thought he was going to throw us out, but he sat down in the armchair across from us after letting out a trembling breath. "Fine," he replied. "Say whatever you came here to say." I didn't mince words. Despite the pain, Logan deserved to know the truth. Avery told us tonight that Caleb had been talking to her for months. He told her things that made her believe you didn't really love her. At first, Logan's expression remained unchanged. He remained motionless as he gazed at me. He gently averted his gaze and squeezed his fists against his thighs, but I wasn't even positive he had heard me. He spoke the words. "So Caleb convinced her to leave me," in a whispery tone. "Manipulated her," said Riley again. He played with her head. "Logan," she stated. "She thought you were just settling for her because Caleb got in her ear." Logan gave a sour laugh, but it was devoid of humor. "Of course he did. That's Caleb. He's always been good at taking things that don't belong to him." I was astonished by the hostility in his voice. Logan has consistently maintained our family's composure. Logan is the quiet anchor if Riley is the firework, and I am the middle child who is always caught in the between. He is not angry. He simply becomes depressed. Now though, he now had an angry expression. "He's done this before," Logan stated abruptly as he looked at the ground. Riley said, "What do you mean?" Logan's expression darkened as he looked up. "Do you honestly believe that this is the first time Caleb has taken anything that was rightfully mine? Do you recall my senior school soccer tryout?" Logan inquired. While attempting to piece things together, I scowled and said, "Yeah, you didn't make the team." "No, I did," Logan said with a sour smile. "Caleb persuaded the coach that he would be a better option and that I was unreliable, even though I made the squad. It took me years to find out. While Caleb made varsity, I was dismissed." "What?" Riley's eyes widened. "Why didn't you say anything, Logan?" "Because nobody would have believed me," he shrugged, adding, "Caleb has always been the one. The golden boy is Caleb. Caleb is impervious to error." After hearing this, something clicked in my mind. Caleb had been our mother's world for years, charming, ambitious, and self-assured, everything an ideal oldest son should be. However, now that the cracks were showing, it became clear that he didn't just take things because he wanted them. He did it to win, to show that he was superior to the rest of us. "Logan," I continued slowly, "what do you suppose caused him to do this to Avery now?" Logan gave me a dumbfounded look and said, "Because he could. I've always made Caleb envious. It's not over. He does a good job of hiding it. Like he's taken everything else, I believe he decided to take away Avery after realizing how happy I was with her." Logan was right. This wasn't just about Avery. It was about Caleb needing to repeatedly demonstrate that he was the best, regardless of who he injured along the way. There was a brief period of silence. Riley appeared to want to punch a wall, and I felt sick to my stomach. Logan wiped his face and said, "You know what's the worst? I cherished her. I cherished her dearly. I also had faith in Caleb. I assumed he was pleased with me." I muttered, "I'm sorry," since I had no idea what else to say and it seemed so hollow. "You don't have to apologize to me," Logan said, shaking his head. "Please let me know what you plan to do about it." Riley grimaced. "What are you saying?" Logan's voice was harsh as he stated, "I mean, Caleb isn't done? You think he's simply going to stop after this? Mom is already on his side. I'm the bad one for not letting it go, but he'll keep making things up until the rest of the family forgives him. He acts in that manner." Riley and I looked at each other, and Logan was right. I hate to say it, but our mother was already setting the stage for us to go over this, and if we didn't do something, Caleb would win, as he usually does. Riley stated, "Mom needs to see what's going on, so we need to talk to her. She cannot continue to stand up for him." "Good luck with that," said Logan, snorting. "Until the day she passes away, Mom will stand up for Caleb. Your time is being wasted." Linda had always made excuses for Caleb, perhaps because he was the firstborn or because he reminded her of herself, but whatever the reason, she had been ignoring Caleb's behavior for years, and it had finally come to this point. I didn't want to believe that, but I knew deep down that Logan wasn't wrong. One thing was clear to me as I watched my younger brother sit in his damaged apartment, though: Caleb was not going to get away with this time. I firmly stated, "This time, we're not going to let him win." After giving me a long look, Logan nodded and said, "Good. Because I'm tired of being a punching bag for Caleb." I sensed a change in myself as Riley and I left Logan's apartment that evening. I was done being kind, done letting Caleb bully everyone while Linda applauded him, and it was time to face Caleb head on. This time, I wasn't going to hold back. Riley and I quickly decided what needed to happen next. Caleb needed to be confronted, really confronted, and not just about Avery. This was about everything that Caleb had been doing for years, including manipulating people, twisting circumstances, and making himself appear like the ideal son while ignoring the rest of us. Logan was correct. Caleb wouldn't stop unless he was forced to, and we were going to force him. When Riley and I unexpectedly arrived at our parents' house the following morning, Linda opened the door, looking astonished to see us and as though she had been up all night worrying. To be honest, good. Her grin was forced. "Mason, Riley," she continued. "What are you doing here?" "We need to talk to Caleb," I said as I walked into the living room, sweeping past her. Linda groaned deeply as she shut the door, and Riley trailed behind me. "This again? Can't you just?" she asked, her voice already worn out. Riley interrupted, turning to stare at her saying, "No, Mom. We can't." "Is Caleb present?" I inquired. "He's upstairs, but I don't know why you," Linda said after hesitating, then nodded. "Perfect," I murmured as I made my way up the stairs. Linda called after me and said, "Mason, don't start anything." Linda had let Caleb for too long, and it was time for someone to do what she wouldn't do, so I disregarded her. I didn't care what Linda thought at this point. Caleb was sitting on his bed with his laptop open when Riley and I marched up the stairs and down the hallway to his old bedroom. The door was half open, so we didn't bother knocking, and I pushed it open. His face twisted into a mixture of smugness and annoyance when he looked up and saw us. "To whom am I due this distinction? Here to lecture me some more?" Caleb replied, leaning back against the wall and shutting his laptop. I crossed my arms and remarked, "We're here for answers, not to lecture you." "I've already explained everything," Caleb said, rolling his eyes. "I didn't plan this with Avery, it just happened. Why aren't you all able to accept that and go on?" "Because it's a lie," Riley said. "Avery told us that you had been peeping into her head for months. You were ruining her friendship with Logan the entire time, Caleb." Even as Caleb's face reddened, his arrogant look persisted. "So? What? Relationships are always ending. Logan's inability to retain her is not my fault. You think this is a game, don't you?" I said, stiffening my fists at my sides as I walked toward him. "You're not even sorry for what you did. Why would I?" "Logan was never right for Avery," Caleb retorted. "I was kind to her." "You took her," Riley screamed. "You can't stand seeing other people happy, so you tricked her into leaving Logan." "Watch it, Riley," Caleb said as he got to his feet, his face changing to a more icy one. "You have no idea what you're discussing." I answered softly, "Oh, we know precisely what we're talking about." "Caleb, You've been doing this for years. Stealing what belongs to Logan, undermining him, and claiming to be the golden child while the rest of us suffer as a result. You're being dramatic. Caleb grinned. Am I? Logan told us about the soccer team, how you persuaded the coach to cut him so you could take his place, I shot back. Does that sound familiar? For a brief moment Caleb's grin wavered, but he immediately got back to it. That was years ago. Who gives a damn? Logan is concerned. Just like you ruined this, you ruined that for him, Riley yelled. Caleb chuckled, but it was a mocking, bitter laugh. You guys are unbelievable, he said. Do you believe that I am the bad guy? Logan is pitiful, he was and always has been. He allows others to walk all over him because he is weak. Avery chose me because I'm superior to him. I didn't steal her. Riley stepped forward and poked a finger at Caleb's chest, saying, You're not better than anyone, Caleb. Even though I could feel my fury boiling. The only reason you get away with being a manipulator and a liar is because Mom allows it. Caleb snarled. Leave Mom out of this. Why? Riley retorted. We all know you're her favorite. No matter what you do, she will stand up for you. Linda suddenly materialized in the doorway. What's happening in here? With a strong voice, she demanded. Riley turned to stare at her and added, Ask your perfect son. Adding that he had recently confessed to coercing Avery into leaving Logan. Linda turned to face Caleb as her face went white. Is that true? Of course not. Caleb answered softly, his voice flowing. Mom, they're misrepresenting what I said. I didn't do it. You claimed that Avery picked you because you're superior to Logan, Riley yelled. Linda's expression was unreadable as she turned to face Caleb, who gave her a wide, naive look, as he often did when he had to get out of trouble. Come on, Mom, you are familiar with me, I would never act in such a manner. For a while, I hoped that Linda would finally recognize Caleb for who he truly was, but she hesitated, and I could see the doubt in her eyes. Then, as usual, she folded. Her voice was tense as she replied, I'm sure there's been a misunderstanding. We're not going to solve anything by yelling. Riley laughed bitterly and said, It's unbelievable. You continue to protect him. I'm not defending anyone, Linda responded. But I'm not going to let this family fall apart over a relationship that didn't work out. This family already is falling apart, I whispered quietly. And it's because of Caleb. Caleb looked bored and shrugged, saying, Cry about it. I finished our talk. Riley snapped, No. We're done with you. What is the intended meaning of that? Caleb narrowed his brows and asked. I said, Logan's done. It means we're not letting you win this time. Riley is finished. I am too. You're by yourself. You can't just cut me out of the family, Caleb said, looking truly shaken for the first time. Watch us, replied Riley icily. Mom, you can act like Caleb is flawless all you want, but the rest of us aren't playing along anymore, I said, turning to Linda, who appeared stunned. Either you're with us or you're with him. You make the decision. Linda gave me a slap-like look and said, You can't ask me to choose. Riley remarked softly, You simply aren't aware that you've already made your decision. I believe that Caleb recognized that he had finally lost control and pushed himself too far since he didn't say anything as we were leaving, and for once, he didn't have a smug response or a lazy shrug. I was relieved as Riley and I left the house because, although Caleb might not be facing actual repercussions today, he would eventually, people like him usually do, and I wasn't going to be there to catch him when he fell for the first time. After that altercation, we didn't hear from either Caleb or Linda for a few days. To be honest, I believe they were both waiting for us to return, as we always did, especially with Linda. In our family, things had always gone like this. Caleb made a mistake, Mom covered it up, and the rest of us had to keep our mouths shut for the sake of keeping the peace, but not this time. You have no idea how long I felt like I was screaming into a void, I added, and Logan actually appeared glad when we told him about what had transpired at the home. It's about time, he muttered, shaking his head. Riley and I had made our decision. Linda made several attempts to contact us over the course of the following week, first by phone and then by text, but each message was the same. Family doesn't behave like this, so we need to communicate. Caleb is your brother, and while I understand your anger, this has gone too far. You don't fully comprehend the story. Let's discuss this over dinner. We chose to ignore her. Riley, Logan, and I were all on the same page for the first time, and it felt liberating. Caleb was no longer our responsibility, so we didn't have to comply if Linda wanted to hold on to him. Caleb wasn't finished though. On a Thursday night, I received a call from an unknown number. I don't typically accept such, but for some reason, I decided to answer. Hello, Mason. I remained silent for a moment, almost expecting Caleb to knock on my door, but I was still taken aback when I heard his voice. It sounded desperate, not cocky or arrogant. What are you looking for? With a flat voice I asked. Caleb hurriedly continued. I need to talk to you. It's important. Hard pass. His voice trembled. Mason, please. And I was shocked because Caleb demanded things instead of asking for them. I answered, against my better judgment. All right. Don't talk on the phone. In an hour, meet me at the depot, please. I didn't want to attend, but I couldn't get rid of the feeling that something wasn't right. The depot was an old diner we used to frequent as kids, and it felt strangely symbolic, as if Caleb was trying to exploit some shared history to guilt me into listening. I didn't recognize Caleb for a moment when I entered the depot an hour later and saw him sitting at a booth in the corner. He had bags under his eyes as if he hadn't slept in days, and his normally flawless hair was unkempt. Caleb, what do you want? I questioned, slipping into the seat across from him. He didn't immediately respond, instead looking down at the table with his fingers tapping nervously. I messed up, he finally stated in a hushed voice. With a sour laugh, I said, yeah, no kidding. No, Mason, I made a huge mistake, more than you thought. I had never seen Caleb this afraid, and there was something about the way he said it that made the hair on the back of my neck rise up. What are you discussing? I inquired. After inhaling deeply, Caleb shakily exhaled. I'm in trouble. Bad luck. I saw panic for the first time in his eyes as he glanced up at me. What sort of issue? With quivering fingers, Caleb ran a hand through his hair and nodded. Debt. I owe a lot of people a lot of money. Mason, I made an effort to correct it, but it got out of hand. His voice broke as he trailed off. Avery. What are you saying? I asked, feeling sick to my stomach. I think I've never seen Caleb seem so embarrassed as he looked at me. I needed money, he said. I reasoned that by getting to know Avery better, I might be able to persuade her to assist me. Her family is wealthy, so I reasoned that perhaps. You made use of her? Startled, I cut in. You used Avery as leverage because of your debt? Despite his recoil, Caleb said. I didn't intend for it to get this far. Although I didn't anticipate her leaving Logan for me, I was unable to stop it once it got going. Caleb had not simply taken Logan's fiancée because he wanted to win, he had done it out of desperation. He had played with Avery's emotions, ruined Logan's life, and split our family apart in order to hide the catastrophe he had created for himself. I gazed at him, trying to take in what he had just said. Is Mom aware? Quietly, I inquired. No, and she can't, Caleb said, shaking his head. If she learns, I'm finally able to recognize you for who you truly are. Good, I responded sourly. She is entitled to the truth. Caleb's voice was suddenly begging, please, Mason, I need your assistance. I have no other people. Aid you? I chuckled incredulously. Are you serious? After all of your actions? Caleb said. You're my brother. Family is meant to stay together. Don't you dare pull the family card, I responded. You don't get to hide behind that after what you did to Logan. Like a drowning man pleading for a life raft, Caleb gazed at me and said, please. Without you, I am unable to resolve this. I felt nothing for Caleb for the first time in my life, no rage or hatred, just emptiness. He was no longer my brother, he was just a man who had ruined every relationship he had ever had. I got up and said, Caleb, you need help, but it won't come from me. Caleb started to disagree, but before he could say anything more I left. Later that night, Riley, Logan, and I convened at my place, and for once, no one was shocked when I told them all Caleb had confessed. Logan said, he's always been like this. It just took him this long to fall apart. How about Mom? Should we tell her? Riley said. After giving it some serious thought, I shook my head and said, no. She's made up her mind. Let her if she wants to think Caleb is flawless. We're done with him though, alongside her. With everything. I had spent my entire life trying to keep this family together, but now I know that sometimes you have to let things fall apart. For the first time in years, I felt free. Neither Linda nor Caleb were my burden anymore. With a small smile on his lips, Logan turned to face Riley and me and said, you think we'll be all right? Yeah, I replied with a smile. We'll be all right. And I did believe it for once. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you. My wife left for a month with the hot new neighbor. I filed for divorce, she tried to fix it, but I'm not a backup. I guess I'm writing this to get it out of my system. My name is Mike, I'm 31 and until lately, I felt I had my life under control. I've always been a simple guy, no big dreams, no crazy drama. I had a regular career as a software developer, a decent house in a quiet neighborhood, and, until recently, I believed I had a strong marriage with a woman I truly loved. Laura and I met almost 8 years ago. Looking back, it seems like a lifetime ago. I was 23, fresh out of college, working my first job, and frankly, naive about life. She was 22, working as an assistant at a marketing agency while trying to figure out her own career path. For the record, she never did and eventually became a stay-at-home wife. We met at a mutual friend's barbecue, one of those casual backyard gatherings when everyone is using cheap paper plates and someone is always burning the burgers. She approached me and made a snarky jest about how I appeared to be planning my escape. I can't recall my response, but she laughed, and we ended up talking for the rest of the evening. From then, everything went quickly. We started dating, and it felt like she gave some excitement to my otherwise mundane and routine life. Laura was adventurous and spontaneous, always planning last-minute road trips or bringing me to a new restaurant she had heard about. Meanwhile, I remained the grounded one. I'd be the one to figure out the budget, check the weather, and double-check the gas tank before we hit the road. It seems to work. We balance each other out. She brought excitement into my life, and I offered her the steadiness she stated she lacked in previous relationships. After 3 years of dating, we decided to get married. The wedding was intimate, with only relatives and close friends. We didn't come from wealthy households, so there was no grand ballroom or extravagant catering, but that didn't matter. After the wedding, we began to establish a life together. We purchased a little 2-bedroom house in a quiet suburb, not the fanciest location, but it had potential. For the most part, things seemed stable. When I got home from work, Laura was generally in the kitchen or on the couch, browsing through her phone. She would tell me stories from her day. She worked in marketing at the time, so there was always some drama with clients or coworkers, and I listened. This was our dynamic. She was the storyteller, and I was the listener. We did not have children, but it was a joint decision. Laura wasn't in a rush, and neither was I. We both preferred to wait until we were more financially stable and prepared for the next major step. We seemed to agree on the majority of issues. Looking back, I wonder if I became too comfortable. It's easy to get into a pattern, especially when life feels stable. I would get up, go to work, return home, and repeat. Of course, we had date nights, which usually consisted of supper at one of our favorite restaurants or a movie. But I believe I stopped noticing the small details, like how Laura seemed to thrive on attention. It wasn't too horrible, at least not at first. She's the type of person that can brighten a room, and people instinctively draw towards her. I guess I began to take her vitality and warmth for granted, expecting they were a continuous part of our lives together. At the moment, I wasn't concerned. I assumed we were solid. Sure, we had disagreements now and then, what marriage doesn't? Most of the time, it was about little matters, such as me forgetting to take out the garbage or her leaving her shoes scattered throughout the home. Nothing significant. But there's this issue about relationships. They can appear fine on the outside while cracks occur quietly underneath. If you don't pay attention, those cracks might expand and cause the entire foundation to crumble. I didn't see it coming, at least not then. I thought we were constructing something robust and long-lasting. But sometimes life has a way of proving you incorrect. Jake, a new character, entered our lives. Jake moved in next door when his former neighbors, an elderly couple, downsized and relocated to Florida. He was roughly 28 years old at the time, making him younger than the majority of the residents in the neighborhood. He was a personal trainer, fit, confident, and admittedly a little too attractive for his own good. He had the type of body that made people look twice, as if he had just stepped out of an action film. Jake was easy to notice from the moment he moved in. Not just because of his appearance, but because he was always outside doing something, washing his car, mowing the lawn, erecting a pull-up bar in his yard. There was always a reason for him to go shirtless. He quickly became the buzz of the neighborhood. Laura spotted him right away. How could she not? We first met Jake when he came over to introduce himself while we were in the yard one Saturday morning. He was pleasant, the type of person who could charm anyone. Laura started up a discussion with him almost immediately, asking where he was from, what he did for a living, and how he liked the neighborhood. I recall standing there, smiling and nodding, barely able to say anything while the two of them chatted like old friends. At the time, I didn't think much of it. Laura was outgoing, she spoke to everyone. She'd be just as chatty with the mailman or the guy at the hardware store. It never seemed to me that there was anything unusual about her interest in Jake. But, looking back, I can see the subtle alterations that occurred after that. It started with casual talks. Laura always found a cause to join Jake outside. At first, it was small tasks like getting the mail, watering the plants, and putting out the trash. However, these brief jobs invariably led to 10 or 15-minute conversations with Jake. I once arrived home from work and discovered them conversing in the driveway. Laura was holding a basket of laundry that she had been carrying to the garage, and Jake was lounging casually against his car, laughing at something she said. When I stepped up, they both turned to me, and Laura pretended it was no big deal. Jake was just telling me about his new gym equipment, she explained casually. It did not stop there. A few weeks later, Laura decided to bake cookies, which she hadn't done in months. I didn't think much of it until I noticed her heading across the yard, a dish of cookies in hand. "Just being neighborly," she remarked when I asked her about it. I shrugged it off. Laura's behavior in this regard was not unique. She had previously brought brownies to other neighbors. But then there was the time she purchased a new set of training clothes. Bright, fitted leggings and a matching top, which was not something she would ordinarily wear. When I asked her about it, she said she was thinking about starting to jog again. "You know, to get back into shape," she explained. I did not question it. Laura had previously gone through fitness phases in which she would become thrilled about working out for a month or two before losing interest. But this time, her timing was ideal. Jake jogged virtually every morning. I'd see him out there, headphones in, doing laps around the street. Laura determined her new jogging program would begin at the same time Jake was out there. I noticed them speaking on the sidewalk one morning as I was going for work. Laura was stretching, and Jake was showing her a way to avoid shin splints. I didn't say anything, just a short wave and drove away. But something in the scene stuck with me. Around this time, I saw Laura's phone habits change as well. She'd always been on her phone, reading around social media and contacting her buddies. But now she appeared wary. When I stepped into the room, she would swiftly lock her screen or flip her phone over, as if she didn't want me to see anything. One night, I observed her scrolling through Instagram, and when I looked over, I saw Jake's name at the top. She hastily swiped past it, but I saw enough to know she was looking at his profile. When I asked her about it, she brushed it aside. "I was just checking out his fitness posts," she told me. "He has some good workout advice." I wanted to believe her, so I let it go. But the small things kept stacking up. Another day, I was working in the garage and heard laughter coming from the backyard. I stepped outside to see Laura and Jake standing near the fence, laughing about something. Laura was holding an iced tea, and Jake was waving animatedly while telling a story. Laura waved at me as if nothing unusual had occurred. "Jake was just telling me about this funny thing that happened at his gym," she explained later when I questioned about it. It was beginning to feel uncomfortable. I don't want to sound paranoid, but you can know when something is wrong. Laura's conversation about Jake had a new energy to it. She'd casually mention things he'd said or done, such as Jake's thinking about getting a dog, or Jake recommended this great protein shake. It wasn't what she was saying, but how she said it. Then there were the glances. You know what I mean. When we went outside and Jake was nearby, I noticed Laura take small glances in his direction. It was subtle, but once you notice it, you can't ignore it. At this moment I had yet to say anything. Part of me refused to think there was anything to worry about. Laura was someone I trusted. We had been together for years, and I thought we had a good relationship. But another part of me, the one that couldn't ignore the pattern, began to question. I chose to be quiet for now, but I began to pay closer attention. If something was happening, I had to witness it for myself. It was a Saturday morning, and I remember it vividly because it began off so typical. I got up early, as I always do, made myself a cup of coffee, and sat at the kitchen table, browsing through the news on my phone. Laura was still in bed, which was not surprising. She enjoyed her slow mornings, particularly on weekends. The house was silent, with only the humming of the coffee machine in the background, and for a brief minute, I felt peaceful. Funny how that works. You think everything is fine because you have no idea what's going to happen. Laura entered the kitchen around an hour later. She was in her pajamas, her hair all tangled from sleeping, holding her phone in one hand and massaging her eyes with the other. She sat across from me at the table, and I could tell something was up right away. She exuded nervous energy, drumming her fingers on the table and gazing at her phone as if she were avoiding eye contact. "Are you okay?" I inquired, setting down my phone. She nodded hastily before shaking her head. "Actually, no," she responded with a big sigh. "We need to talk." Anyone who has been in a relationship understands that those 4 words rarely mean anything good. My stomach knotted, but I tried to keep it cool. All right, I murmured, reclining in my chair. What's going on? Laura paused, her gaze flitting around the room as if she was looking for the proper words. Finally, she looked at me and said, I don't know how to say this, so I'm just going to say it. I think I have feelings for Jake. For a moment, I believed I had misheard her. What? I asked, leaning forward as if being closer would make the words more clear. She bit her lip, appearing really uncomfortable. I didn't mean for it to happen, she said hurriedly, as if she wanted to avoid the response. It just happened. I've been spending time with Jake, and I feel this connection, and now I'm confused. Confused. That word struck me more than anything else. She did not just express her guilt or admit that she had made a mistake. She expressed her confusion, as if she was trying to solve a puzzle. I stared at her, trying to understand what she was saying. My thoughts raced. Did she mention she wanted to leave? Is she asking for a divorce? Was she trying to confess and move on? I couldn't tell, and that made things worse. So, what does this mean? I inquired finally. Are you saying you're done with us? Laura shook her head rapidly. No, not necessarily, she replied. I don't know what I want right now. I love you, Mike. I do, but I can't stop thinking about him, and I need to figure out what these feelings mean. I felt as if the floor had been torn out from beneath me. We'd been together for years, had established a life together, and now she said she wasn't sure she wanted to be with me anymore. It was surreal. I took a deep breath and tried to hold my voice steady. So, what are you saying? You want to take a break? She hesitated and then nodded. Kind of, she responded. I need time to figure things out. I was thinking maybe I could take a month to spend some time with Jake and see if there's something real there. If it doesn't work out, then we can focus on ourselves. I blinked, astounded by her audacity. You're serious? I asked, without even framing it as a question. Laura nodded, her gaze begging. I know it sounds crazy, but I don't want to throw away what we have without being sure. I don't want to live with regrets, you know? Regrets. The phrase lingered in my head like a splinter. She was talking about regrets as if she was the one putting everything on the line, as if my feelings were secondary to her life-changing decisions. I sat there, staring at her, a combination of rage and incredulity boiling beneath the surface. Part of me wanted to yell at her for being so selfish. But another part of me, perhaps the calmer, more calculated side, chose to remain silent and let her dig her own hole. All right, I murmured, reclining back in my chair. Laura blinked, apparently taken off guard. Wait, really? Sure, I replied, shrugging as if it were no great issue. If you think that's what you need, go ahead. Her look flickered, as if she didn't know whether I was being real or mocking. I just think it's the best way to figure out where my heart is, she admitted cautiously. Sure, I replied. Do what you need to do. Inside, I was already finished. When she mentioned she wanted to spend a month with another man, my brain flicked a switch. But I didn't want to show my cards yet. If she was willing to abandon our marriage for a dream with a neighbor, I was curious to see how far she would go. Laura let out a relieved sigh, as if she had just been given permission to accomplish something heroic. Thank you, she replied, reaching across the table to touch my hand. I know this is a lot to ask, but I really believe it's the right thing for us. I stood up and grabbed my coffee mug, pulling my hand away. Sure, I repeated, my voice flat. If that's what you need. She said nothing after that, simply sat there, most likely contemplating the fact that I wasn't arguing or fighting. But within, I was already planning. Laura spent the following few days packing a modest bag. She informed me she'd be staying with Jake, and she made it sound casual, as if it was simply a temporary arrangement. She didn't appear to realize that I wasn't asking inquiries or expressing any resistance. When Laura went, the house felt different. Not empty, but quieter, as if someone had turned down the volume on my life. I stood in the living room after she left, her duffel bag slung over her shoulder, and stared at the door. I expected to feel angry or heartbroken, but all I felt was a peculiar peace, as if the weight of pretending everything was fine had finally been lifted. I strolled into the kitchen, poured myself a drink of water, and stood there, trying to figure out what had just happened. My wife, whom I had been with for years and expected to spend my life with, had departed to figure things out with the guy next door. If it hadn't been my life, I would have assumed it was some insane TV drama. The first several days felt odd. I started noticing the little things she'd left behind. Her favorite cup on the kitchen counter, a pair of shoes near the entrance, and a blanket thrown over the back of the couch. I considered relocating them, but ultimately chose to leave them where they were. Not because I missed her, but because I didn't want to waste energy. I poured myself into work, taking on extra assignments to fill my schedule. I stayed late at work not because I had to, but because I didn't want to return home to an empty house. When I wasn't working, I went to the gym frequently. I had never been a regular gym goer before, but there was something fulfilling about pushing myself physically, as if I could sweat out all of my stress. Friends began to realize that something was amiss. A few of them inquired as to why Laura was not present, and I responded vaguely. "She's staying with a friend for a while," I explained, attempting to sound casual. I wasn't ready to dive into the real tale yet. My father was the only one I spoke the truth to. I contacted him a few days after Laura left, and the first thing he asked was, "What's wrong?" He's always been able to read me, even over the phone. When I informed him what had happened, there was a prolonged delay on the other end of the call. Then he added, "Well, son, I hate to say it, but it sounds like you're better off without her." At first, I wasn't sure what to reply. I anticipated him to be more furious or ask more questions. But then he said something that remained with me. "If she doesn't know your worth, why should you wait around for her to figure it out?" He was correct. I'd spent so much time trying to understand Laura's decision and find out where I went wrong that I hadn't considered what I deserved. I wasn't just a backup plan in case her affair with Jake didn't work out. That night, I sat in the darkened living room, staring at the wedding photo on the mantel. We seemed so pleased in that image, so certain in our future. But now it simply felt like a reminder of all that had gone wrong. By the end of the week, I had made my decision. I was not going to sit around and wait for Laura to make her big decision. I was planning to make my own. The next day, I called a divorce attorney. Sitting in that lawyer's office felt weird. I detailed the scenario, attempting to maintain a steady voice, even though a part of me still couldn't believe it was true. The lawyer listened intently, nodding as I spoke, and when I finished, he replied, "You are well within your rights to file for divorce. This type of situation falls under irreconcilable differences." Hearing those words made things click in my head. Irreconcilable differences. This is what we would become. Laura and I weren't on the same page anymore, and perhaps we never had been. The lawyer guided me through the process, outlining what I needed to do and what I could expect. By the time I left his office, I had a strange sense of satisfaction, as if I had finally taken charge of my life. Back home, I began taking little efforts to prepare for the inevitable. I transferred some money to a second account in case things became ugly later. I walked through the house and began mentally partitioning what was mine and what was hers. I didn't touch her belongings yet. I figured I'd wait until things were official, but in my head, I was already planning how the house would look without her. The days stretched into weeks, and I grew accustomed to the stillness. It wasn't as horrible as I expected. In fact, it felt really tranquil. I didn't have to deal with Laura's continual chatter or the minor disagreements over trivial matters like whose turn it was to do the dishes. Meanwhile, I started hearing stuff through the grapevine. A neighbor reported seeing Laura and Jake at the park, looking cozy. Another person claimed to have seen them at a cafe downtown. I nodded and smiled, as if nothing bothered me, but inside I was filled with rage and pity. Anger because she had thrown away everything we owned for a fling with a boy who was unlikely to stick around. Pity, because I knew it wouldn't go well for her. Jake did not strike me as the sort to settle down, and Laura was about to find out the hard way. By the third week, I had stopped checking my phone for Laura's texts. I assumed if she wanted to communicate, she'd reach out, but I wasn't holding my breath. I was finished waiting for her. One night, while cleaning out the garage, I came upon a box of old photos from when Laura and I first met. For a brief period, I felt a stab of sadness as I remembered how happy we had been back then. But then I remembered all the subtle red signs I'd disregarded over the years, all the times I'd prioritized her demands over mine without even recognizing it. I closed and moved the box away. I didn't need those memories. Laura decided to make her spectacular reappearance almost exactly a month ago today. I had not heard anything from her during her brief trial with Jake. The few texts she sent were vague at best. "Hope you're doing okay," or "We'll chat when I get back." She didn't even try to keep me updated or pretend she was torn about her decision. It was as if she had already dismissed me as Plan B. By this point, I had ceased caring. I wasn't waiting by the door for her to come to her senses. I wasn't pacing the house, wondering what she and Jake were doing. I had filed for divorce, and my lawyer had already begun drafting the paperwork. As far as I was concerned, the marriage was ended. But I didn't tell her that just yet. When she went through the door, nothing seemed to have changed, at least for her. She had her bag draped over her shoulder, her hair nicely done, and a confident expression on her face, as if she'd just returned from a trip and was expecting me to roll out the red carpet. "Hey," she said, placing her luggage by the door. "I'm back." I was sitting on the couch, scrolling between channels and scarcely looking up. "Welcome back," I murmured, my tone remaining neutral. She paused, as if she was anticipating more of a response. When I didn't jump up or inquire how it went, she walked over and perched on the couch's arm. "We should talk," she stated quietly and carefully. I turned to face her and muted the TV. "All right," I replied, crossing my arms. "Talk." Laura smiled, the kind of smile she used when she was trying to make things better. "I've done a lot of thinking," she told me. "And I've realized some things. About myself. About us, about what I want." I simply nodded, waiting for her to continue. She took a big breath, as if she were ready to give an impassioned statement. "I care about you, Mike. I really do. And I think we can work through this. I think we can rebuild what we have." Rebuild. She stated it as if it were as simple as repairing a leaking faucet. I didn't say anything, simply looked at her, allowing her to fill the silence. She was perplexed by my silence, but she persisted. "Jake's a great guy," she remarked, and I had to bite my tongue to stop giggling at how casually she mentioned him. "But I realized he's not what I need. He's fun, sure, but he's immature. He doesn't have the stability that you have, and I think I was just caught up in the excitement of it all." There it was. Her big revelation. She tried out the shiny new toy and decided she liked the old one more. "Uh-huh," I replied, my voice cool. Laura blinked, as if she expected a more intense reply. "I know I've hurt you," she murmured, reaching out and touching my arm. "But I really believe we can get past this. We've been through so much together, Mike. We have history. That's not something you just throw away." I let her continue. I let her unload all of her perfectly practiced phrases about love, forgiveness, and beginning over. When she finished talking, I rose up and walked over to the kitchen counter. I unlocked a drawer, pulled out the divorce papers my lawyer had sent over, and placed them on the table in front of her. "What's this?" she inquired, her smile fading. "Divorce papers," I explained simply. Her face turned pallid. "You're kidding," she exclaimed, releasing a frightened laugh. "Nope," I replied, leaning against the counter, arms folded. "I'm not kidding." For a time, she stared at the papers, as if she couldn't believe what she saw. Then she glanced up at me with big eyes. "You're divorcing me?" "Yeah," I said, my voice steady. "I'm not interested in being your second choice, Laura." Her face went from shock to angry in an instant. "Second choice?" she demanded. "That's not what this is." I was confused, Mike. I needed time to figure things out. "And in the process, you decided to test the waters with another man," I added calmly. "You left. You walked out on our marriage. And now you're back because it didn't work out with him. Do you honestly think I'm just going to take you back like nothing happened?" Laura opened her mouth to argue before closing it again, her face growing red. "It's not like that," she responded, her voice quivering. "I was trying to do the right thing. I didn't want to stay and resent you. I thought—" She trailed off, her gaze darting across the room. "You thought you could have it both ways," I said for her. She stood up and crossed her arms. "You're making a mistake, Mike. We can fix this." "I know we can." "No," I replied firmly. "We can't. You made your choice, and now I'm making mine." She appeared to be about to cry, but I didn't let that affect me. I had already made up my mind. The remainder of the conversation was a haze. She tried to argue and guilt me into altering my mind. She discussed our history, our home, and even the possibility of starting a family someday. But nothing worked. Finally, she stormed out of the house. I stood there for a time, staring at the empty area where she had been, without feeling anything. No sadness, no regret, no second thoughts, only relief. Later that night, I called my lawyer to inform him that Laura had seen the paperwork. He said, "How'd she take it?" "Not great," I remarked, smirking. "Do you want to give her time to process, or should we move forward?" "Move forward," I instructed without hesitation. It wasn't easy standing up to Laura, but it was ultimately the correct thing to do. She viewed me as a backup plan in case her fling didn't work out. And if she believed I'd take it, she obviously didn't know me as well as she imagined. I knew she would not give up easily. Laura was not the sort to simply walk away from a confrontation, especially one in which she thought she was losing. I'd hardly sat down when my phone buzzed with a text from her. "This isn't over." I gazed at the message for a second before locking my phone and throwing it on the couch. She was correct, it was not over. Not yet. But it would happen soon enough. The following several days were eventful, to say the least. Laura arrived unannounced the next evening, beating on the door as if she were attempting to break it down. "Mike, open the door," she exclaimed. I opened it, keeping a bland attitude. "What do you want, Laura?" She rushed by me and stormed into the living room, as if she still lived there. "We need to talk," she stated, pacing back and forth. "You can't just file for divorce without giving me a chance to fix things." I leaned against the doorframe and crossed my arms. "You had your chance," I replied quietly. "You made your decision when you left." "That's not fair," she responded, her voice rising. "I didn't leave to end our marriage, I left to figure things out, to make sure I wasn't making a mistake by staying." I could not help but laugh dryly. "And in doing that, you proved you didn't value what we had. You don't test a marriage by running off to someone else, Laura. That's not how it works." She paused pacing and turned to face me, her eyes blazing with frustration. "I was confused," she remarked, her voice shaking. "I didn't know what I wanted, but I know now. I want us, Mike. I want to fix this." "Too late," I replied, my tone strong. "You don't get to come back now just because things didn't work out with Jake." Her face contorted in rage, and she aimed a finger at me. "You're being petty," she said. "You're throwing away everything we built over one mistake." I shook my head, maintaining my composure. "It wasn't just one mistake, Laura. It was a series of choices. You chose to flirt with Jake. You chose to prioritize your feelings for him over our marriage. And then you chose to leave. Those weren't accidents, they were decisions." She opened her lips to argue, but then stopped, her shoulders sagging. For the first time, she appeared defeated. "What am I supposed to do now?" she inquired quietly. I sighed, feeling pity for her, despite everything she had done. "That's not my problem anymore," I explained. "You made your choices. Now you have to live with them." She waited for another minute, looking as if she wanted to say anything else, but then she walked out without saying anything. Following that, the divorce proceedings went fast. Laura attempted to drag things out at first, perhaps expecting I would change my mind. She even tried to play the victim in front of our mutual acquaintances, accusing me of being cold and cruel. My father, on the other hand, was completely on my side. When I told him about the scenario, he let out a low whistle. "She's got some nerve," he commented. "But I'm proud of you, son. Standing your ground isn't easy, but it's the right thing to do." Laura's stalling tactics proved ineffective. My lawyer was sharp, and the proof of her leaving for Jake made things quite clear. She attempted to plead for spousal support, stating she had given up her profession for the marriage, but the judge did not buy it. Finally, we reached a reasonable deal. She received a modest sum of money and some of the furniture she'd chosen, but I kept the house and the most of my savings. It was not ideal, but it was better than I had anticipated. The final hearing was bittersweet. Sitting in that courtroom, signing the documents that would officially end our marriage, felt strange. I glanced across at Laura a few times. She appeared exhausted, as if she hadn't slept in days. Her lawyer handed her a pen, and for a brief minute, I assumed she was not going to sign. But eventually, she scribbled her name at the bottom of the sheet, completing the transaction. Following the hearing, she approached me in the hallway. "Mike," she spoke softly, just above a whisper. "I'm sorry for everything." I stared at her, hoping to recognize the person I'd fallen in love with all those years ago, but all I saw was someone I used to know. "I know you are," I replied. "But sorry doesn't fix this." Her eyes welled up with tears, and she reached out to hug me, but I pulled aside. "Take care of yourself, Laura," I whispered, starting to walk away. I'd occasionally hear tidbits about Laura through the grapevine. Jake obviously moved on to someone else shortly after she returned to me. According to one common friend, she was currently living with a relative and figuring out her next moves. I didn't feel satisfied hearing about her problems, but I also didn't feel sorry for her. She had made her decisions, and now she was dealing with the consequences. One day, I ran into her at the supermarket. We locked eyes briefly, and I could see remorse written all over her face. She gave me a little hesitant wave, but I simply nodded and moved past. There was nothing more to say. Looking back, I don't regret how I handled situations. Laura believed she could have it both ways. She could go, pursue her feelings for someone else, then return to me if it didn't work out. But life does not operate that way. I've learned a lot about myself along this process. I realize now that I deserve someone who cherishes me and does not consider me as a last resort. And if that individual is out there, fantastic. If not, that's okay too. For the time being, my primary goal is to reconstruct my life on my own terms. Laura's trial run with Jake may have been her way of gaining clarity, but it was a wake-up call I didn't realize I needed. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.